Hello and welcome to Functional Music Theory on Guitar, Part 4. So in the first three parts, we've discussed different bits about the collection of chords, some discussions about ideas, and really it kind of holds true with this one as well, that we want to try to take the material and basically create with it. So on that note, we brought back some of the opening chords that we had in the first few parts of this series. So they're back again. The look of this is a little different. We have the bigger fretboard view, of course, and the chord library right here on the side. So if you have trouble looking at the top of the score, there's some backups over here as well. So I'm not going to go through the spellings of the chords. You'll see things highlighted as we go into the fretboard view. You'll see the notes being highlighted in both the scale play and the chord play towards the end. If I scroll down here a little bit, you'll see the chords are all stacked up at the end. So you can start anywhere in the score that you want to. I'm just going to play the score on its own before I go into any kind of demonstration. And I'll discuss a few things about the parts of the score. So let's hear it first. And I'll leave, like I mentioned, everything in view so you can see things being highlighted as the playthrough goes through. So here it comes. All right, there you go. That's the whole of the score. And you heard from the beginning, sounds like a very rudimentary way of playing through the scale here. This is called C major. That's the key we're in, by the way, and the scale is all laid out. Again, very basic way of playing scales. Scales are kind of boring to play through, but really the idea behind having the scale is that we need some sounds. So if we're going to create something, we need to have a bass line to work off of. So having the C major scale in this way played ascending, which is the first two bars, bars 2 and 3. Scale is going up. You can see how the notes are going up the page. If we were to do this continual line, if we had this idea of a line going through, we'd go up and up and up, and you can see the mouse kind of moving in an upward direction across the screen. Conversely, with measures 4 and 5, we have the notes going in a descending fashion, moving down. So that's what music does. Notes ascend, they descend, and that carries over into this section of music. So you'll see these little words over the top, like this one, Ionian. I'm going to blow this up a little bigger so you can see it. All right, so we have Ionian. So fancy term, it's a Greek term for the name of this collection in this key. Ionian is the first group, like say if you were to play in the next key, which we're going to do in future parts of this series, this name right here would be a different name depending on what key you're in, but it always starts on the first note of the key you're playing or the scale you're going to play. So we're not going to go to it today, we're not going to discuss it, but Ionian is the collection here. The note starts on C, so it's C Ionian. You can see it's 3rd fret on the A string. Dorian is the next name of this collection. It's called D Dorian, and you can hear how the sounds descended. You could play any of these notes in any way you want. If you want to go back and reverse the order, you could, and you would get a ascending Dorian sound. All right. Same thing with this Phrygian. So it starts on the third part of the key you're in. In this case, it's E. So we went from the first starry note C to the second starry note D. Now the third note, it's going to be the name of this particular mode. That's what these things are. So I threw the terms in there just so you have them. I wouldn't worry about memorizing them off the top of your head and kind of getting them down. Just get used to the sounds that you get when you play this collection. You can hear how it repeats. So feel free to go descending with it too. I only wrote it ascending to make the collection a little more interesting to play. Okay, because again, scales can be boring, but they're very important to get sound in your ears. So if you want to create something, you have something in your ear to work off of. All right. Lydian is the next one. It starts on the note F. So we have C Dorian, C Ionian, excuse me, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian. That's what we have for these sounds. If you were to name them, that's what they're called. G Mixolydian is the next one. So you're starting on G, open third string. You can see in your intabulation. Moving on to a high A, which we haven't seen in past collections of this series. So we have a brand new note, and it's played right here. First string, 5th fret. Okay, the high E string, the thin string. Top string, by the way. It's not the bottom string, it's the top string. So you can see it's the top of the range. So we have the highest note here in the manuscript and also the highest note on the string that we're playing that note on so far. So we get a 3-note run, 5th fret to 3rd fret to 1st fret, A, G, and F. Okay, and it moves down. So you can see every other measure has a different direction. So you have a upward direction in measure 6, then in measure 8, we're going up again, different note. So there's a lot of things you can do with this, by the way. All right, so A Aeolian, where we left off, the high A is there, and then we're jumping down to a B note on the A string, 2nd fret. So you have B, Locrian, or Locrian, depending how you want to pronounce it. So, but the cool thing about this is the repetition part. Okay, playing through this collection in an ascending fashion, the skip from the 2nd string back to the 5th string is a great technique builder for the right hand. The ability to skip over strings without it breaking the action, making it sound smooth. That's really some of the aims you have when you play through this on a technical front. But as a musical front and hearing this stuff, hearing these leaps from this note down to that note, or conversely, if you were to play the next series off of D, the high D jumping down to the low D, or if you were to reverse all this going up, you would have D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and then jump back down to the low string. So there's a lot of different flexibility you can throw into this thing. You don't have to actually play these measures as written. Do whatever you want with them. But again, as a starting point to kind of work with sound, play it as is, and then you have the freedom to do what you want with it creatively. Again, that's the part of the functionality of this series, is taking this information and just manipulating it. Playing it any way you want, repeating notes, skipping over notes, whatever you want to do. As long as you kind of stay within the collection, you'll get to work your ear a little bit, which helps when you're trying to create things. Okay, and then at the end here of this sort of scale type of deal, we're going back down again, the high C going down to the low C. Like in the first measure, we didn't have that. We had the reverse. We went from the low C up to the high C. Okay, so measure 13 and measure 6 have the same basic layout. If you were to play these back to back, you would get basically measures 2 through 5, but played with 8th notes, which is what these guys are. This measure here contains the 8th notes. So we're taking the beat and splitting it into 2 equal parts, and you'll hear that with the playback as you heard just before. So, all right, so that's enough of the yammering about this stuff. And now we have our chord measures, right? So we have everything we need here. C chord, D minor, pretty standard ways of playing these 2 chords, as well as E minor. And then this funky thing, this F/C, it's basically an F chord, but we got rid of the bar. Typically you would play in this area, you would play a bar chord. So I decided to skip that function and just leave it, with just the F/C. C is the lowest note of the chord, but at the heart, it's an F chord. There happens to be a C in the F chord, but that's going to be the lowest tone of the chord. So that's what the slash means when you see that in the name of the chord. The slash after the letter is what's going to be in the bass, the lowest string, in this case, we're playing a C note on the A string, which is the lowest sound of the chord. And when you read chord stacks, you read from the bottom up, right? So that's why when we talk about the strings, knowing where your bottom string is and your top string, right? Everybody flips it around. So when you get to the music, the thing is you're playing your bottom string and playing up to the top string. So when you read the notes, it's the same thing. C, E, G, C, E. Those of you in tabland, 3, 2, 0, 1, 0. So if you are playing that particular collection in these entabulated spots, that's what represents a C chord. So the one thing I try to do is get out of the tablature and get into the names of the notes, because when you hear music, these are the specific things you're hearing. To describe the sound to somebody, I wouldn't go with 3, 2, 0, 1, 0. Doesn't really tell me a whole lot. I mean, I'll put my fingers there, but it's not saying anything about what the name of the sound is. You want to know that's a C chord. So when you hear that sound in a song, you can identify it. You're not identifying chords by numbers, right? You're identifying them by letters from the alphabet, and there's only 7 to keep track of. But for chords, there's only 3 letters to keep track of. So through repetition and playing through these things, such as they're laid out here, you start to get specific information. So if you're actually creating a song, you can actually identify what you did after the fact. The idea with creativity is to create first, make sounds happen, put them together in a certain way, and then at the end of it, be able to identify what you did. That's really important. It breaks you out of ruts. You don't get into a rut in your playing if you can actually sit and actually identify what you did. That actually gives you more knowledge and gives you more freedom to sort of flex the creative process and do different things. And then, of course, after the fact, be able to describe what you did. It's a really big part of guitar playing. It's getting that literacy part together on the instrument after the creation part is done, right? So I want to really emphasize that, because that's something that can get lost if you go into these music theory type of scenarios and courses and things like that. The creative part tends to get lost a little bit with all the verbiage and musical terminology and whatnot. That all comes after you do it. So composers don't, sort of concern themselves with rules and whatnot. There's a sound that's in their mind that they want to get out onto the instrument of choice. And then to be able to discuss what happened after the fact is the pinnacle of the creative process. It really kind of shows people what you did with the song, and you can communicate that to other players who may play their compositions. Or if it's a songwriter, communicate that to the artist if you're writing for an artist, be able to describe what it is you did. So if they play an instrument, they have an idea. Hopefully if they're up on, what's involved with naming chords and, reading chord charts and things like that, it just makes you a better player and more well-rounded. And the risk of getting into a rut diminishes quite greatly, actually, being able to describe everything that you see, all right? And play and all that good stuff. So there's your chord collection on top. Again, very standard fare with the exception of the F/C. If you can play an F bar chord, by all means go for it. It's not a problem. I have this here just so that if there are, players out there that come across this lesson having a hard time playing an F bar chord, this kind of gets you out of that scene. And the fact that we have no open strings in the chord gives you a chord form. So wherever you move this chord, the letters will change accordingly, okay? So if you take this shape and go to 3rd fret with it, with the first finger here, I wonder if I can actually blow this up a little bit bigger. Here we go. So if you take this shape, move it up, by, in this case, 1, 2, 3 frets, and you land the first finger here, this is going to be a D, then you're going to have a B after that, you're going to have a G and a D, so that'll be a G/D chord. So you can play a G chord in a different fashion than what's here. If you take this shape and move it up, you can swap it out. You can take this shape, slide up to 3rd fret, and get a different kind of G chord. So there's a lot of options, and that flows nicely into the A minor chords if you play these chords in order. Okay, and this shape here, the B half diminished 7 chord, if you move this up and down the neck, you'll get that type of chord quality, just like this one. No open strings. When that is a case in a chord collection, that gives you the freedom to move it around. All right, so again, if you're trying to create, right, that's the thing too. You try to find shapes you can move around. And on that note, I'm going to get out of the share for a second and just demonstrate that point. Okay, so the F/C, okay, and then the B half diminished 7. And again, I'm just messing around. I'm taking the F chord with the C in the bass, moving it up. It becomes a G chord with a D in the bass. So I'm playing just the inside strings. I'm skipping both the low and the high E string. Again, in terms of geography on the guitar, I'm going to kick this down a little bit more. Sorry, excuse me. All right, so the idea with the shape there is that both E strings, the low E string, bottom string, by the way, not top string, and this is the top string, not the bottom string, okay? So bottom, top. Just like in the layout of the notes, you read from the bottom up, okay? So that's the bottom string. So don't think that's a top string. It's not, because we're dealing with sound. So I always see people getting this wrong, distinguishing what the actual bottom and top strings are on the guitar. Just because you can see it and it's right here doesn't mean that's a top string. Again, you want to think with the ear, right? That's a low sound, so that's the bottom range of the instrument, okay? And that's the top of the instrument if we're playing just open strings, okay? So if you're playing on a single string, this is the bottom of the range on a single string. This is the top of the range on a single string, okay? So that's the thing. That's the bottom part of that string. Moving on up to the top part of the string is where the frets end, okay? So if you're going from left to right, just like on piano, that's how that will work. So with just open strings, bottom, not top, top, not bottom, okay? So that's the thing. We want to really get that driven in as a thing. So don't get that wrong, because it's going to confuse you if you're trying to work with the ear and be able to hear things by ear and identify them. You need to know where the bottom of your range is and the top of your range, okay? Just like when you read tablature or manuscript. Same thing there. You read from the bottom up. You read up into the staff, whether it's tablature, trying to find what the low string is, and reading up to find out where the top note is of the chord or the note or whatever it is. So it really translates into that type of thing. So, okay, getting back to those chord bits, you know, that's really the heart of it too when you're working on this particular part or any of the parts in this series. Spend time with just the sounds first before you launch into the chart. You know, get used to what it is, whether it's a scale or the eighth note bit. As you play through the collection of notes, you can go through maybe actually just improvising. I did a palm mute technique, which made the notes sound a little more muted. This is what the palm mute does. The side of your hand here kind of plays on the string near the bridge right here to produce that thuddy sound. So there's different things you can do with acoustic and electric that could influence how you create what you want to create. And I was just messing around with the different notes, and that's really a big part of it, you know, taking a certain part of the lesson that I present here and just playing with just that only is great. Skipping around, there's all kinds of stuff you can do. I laid it out in terms of presentation, and then it's up to you to take it and go even that further extra distance with it. Excuse me. So that's the idea with that. Whether it's playing through those chords and seeing what they sound like. I mean, it's endless what you can do with it. So it just starts with hearing these different sounds, and from playing through these different sounds, you can approach something in any way you want. That's really the idea. Take the information, repeat it in any fashion you want, change the direction of the notes, change the order of the chords, play any chord as much or as little as you want to. Deleting certain chords out of the collection that you want to play with is up to you as well. So again, that's the application. That's the idea of functional theory. Just naming these different sounds and then using them but again, the creative part is use first and then identification after. Okay, so that's the thing. But like I mentioned in the beginning, there's got to be a place where you sort of spring off of. There's got to be a springboard to the information to be able to function with it. Okay. Again, don't let the terminology throw you or anything like that. Get the sound going first, and then you can identify it. And there's only just one key. A lot of these, not so much a lot of these, but the series so far is based in one key only, C major. Okay, we'll do the same thing in G major, and maybe sidestep some of the creative, not really creative, but the procedural sort of information starting in each key a little different. So I'm spending a lot of time to kind of lay out the baseline of everything. So when we switch keys, we don't have to spend as much time discussing certain things. It'll just carry over into the next key in the way it will. So, all right, guys. So on that note, I'll, no pun intended, I'll call it on this particular part of the series. And if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. I'd love to have you. There are people who are signing up, and I thank you so much for signing up and subscribing. And feel free to leave comments below. Any of the videos in this channel or specific videos that you want to comment on, feel free to do so. I have no problem with people commenting on what the material does, and maybe if there's certain things that you're not clear on, feel free to ask questions, not a problem. And I can address them in the comment section, or I could do a separate video addressing maybe there's a lot of questions about the material. We can discuss it in another video. So, all right. Hopefully the length of these videos is good and you're getting a lot out of this information. So, like I mentioned, if you like what you see, feel free to like and subscribe and pass it on to your friends, share the videos. I think they're pretty much like shareable so far. And also with these functional music theory videos that I'm doing, the score, a lot of these scores will be done as playthrough videos. If you see the playthrough video thing on the channel, which I have a couple already, you can actually just listen to the scores without me talking about them. So, but I'll present the score in playback fashion. So look forward to getting those up for you guys as well. And that'd be a great thing. And you can just listen to the track and then play through at your leisure. If you want to change tempo on any of these videos, feel free to go into the playback settings in YouTube, and you can actually slow things down or speed them up. I tried to keep the tempos at 60 beats per minute, and that kind of keeps it at a sort of a moderate tempo, not too slow, not too fast. But feel free to change that via the playback settings on your YouTube access points, and you can change the tempo and have it played back at any speed you want. Okay, so I try to keep it at, like I said, 60. It's a pretty safe tempo, not too slow, not too fast, but sometimes depending on the rhythm, the tempo might feel fast. So feel free to change that at will. All right, so all right, on that note, I will call it. So thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it useful, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.